Good reference. Good reference. Oh, wow. And try to tie this to other aspects of period 8 we've kind of talked about already, that Carlos just did.
Kind of not always giving the opportunity. Is that like his idea of a great society?
Okay, so like his idea of liberalism is for a society. Like he's liberal when it comes to people. But
All right, I'm going to stop you there. So, Leslie, what do you think? What is his perspective? Let me read the quote so that everybody's on the same page. We must open the doors of opportunity, but we must also equip our people to walk through those doors. Leslie, what'd you pull out of this?
I feel like from under his presidency, like the Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act, I feel like he was liberal towards equality for everyone.
Okay, super liberal in this regard, absolutely. Carry on.
But like there was always like this kind of, he has to manage like this new conservative like bloc.
Sure. Especially in his case, as being a Southerner, like he's from a very conservative state with a very conservative voting bloc. So, and he kind of blows, as I talked about last week, he kind of blows that out of the water, ruining the South for Democrats forever. Very good. Milton, what of the reading or of this period can you tie this quote to?
Well, Carlos had mentioned.
Carlos had mentioned.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
I really like what he said. The book about like how the other America.
Okay, good. The other America. We talked about that a couple weeks ago, showing that there is this whole segment of what?
Like people that like are not like meaning to what the 50s was supposed to be. So like poverty, Indians getting relocated.
So you're going to tie this to that whole like affluence of the 50s and say that not everybody's there. Okay? What does he aim to do about it, Matthew?
He's trying to end poverty.
How?
Same thing with like FDR and the make programs, whichever works, just go with it.
Sure, please.
I think he's advocating for equity, not equality.
I like that what Edgar said. He's advocating for equity, not equality. Access, not handouts. Now let's talk about this before I even get started, because it's important to put this in its proper context in regards to liberalism in the 20th century. Alright? We start with the progressives and the progressive era presidents, and then like an FDR, and then an LBJ. In terms of all these advocates, what are they asking for more of? Access, sure, but who should help provide that access? The government, good. So we go way back in time, right? Like the progressive era, late Gilded Age, Panic in 1893. The progressives all the way forward to LBJ, right? We put Teddy, Taft, Wilson, FDR hugely, and LBJ huge. Like what they're advocating is more government involvement, more government control, more government power to ensure equity, right? That when we leave humans alone, like people get taken advantage of. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is a matter of not of right or wrong, but of perspective. And in this case, like we need to tie LBJ's politics and this perspective to this idea of liberalism in the 20th century. This liberal perspective that it's the government's job to ensure equity. Not equality, but equity, access, chances. So he's saying like, yeah, we got to open the doors of opportunity, but if we don't give people the resources and the ability to walk through those doors, then what's the point? Well, we can also compare this to saying like, well, African Americans in the South could vote. The 15th Amendment said so, which is true. But we've also closed all these other doors with things like poll taxes and fear with the KKK, right? And literacy tests and all these things. So it's not just about opening doors for people. It's about making sure that when those doors are open, that you and me and whoever has the resources needed to walk through those doors. So this is LBJ's perspective on the world, and we'll get into what he does about it as we go through class, but it's an important place to start. I'm not going to start with LBJ today, I'm going to start with JFK. And we're not going to focus so much on LBJ's civil rights actions, because we've already did that through the civil rights movement, but more so on his social equity actions. All right, what's his economic stuff? What's his more political stuff? Cool? So what I did for today is I put your key concepts on your paper, so you can tie everything to that. Everything I talk about will tie to that. And I gave you 3 big idea questions. Gasca, can you read the first one for us, please?
No movements of civil rights and liberal efforts to expand.
No, the question. Big idea question.
Oh.
You're good.
Compare and contrast the domestic policies of the 1950s and 1960s.
Cool. So what do our presidents here do differently or maybe similarly to the 1950s? All right. So again, try to put all period in perspective. Second question, Maura.
Compare and contrast the foreign policies of the 1950s and 1960s.
Beautiful. What words did we use for foreign policy in the 50s and 60s? Juan, give me a word. What words did we use for foreign policy of the 50s? Containment. Good. Ever. Brinksmanship. Good. Truman Doctrine, Marshall Plan, right? That's our foreign policy in the 50s. As we get into the 60s, what's our foreign policy there? And the third big idea question, Jesus, can you read it first, please?
Compare and contrast the New Deal and the Great Society.
And that's the big one. We're going to compare and contrast the New Deal and the Great Society to have a better understanding of why LBJ is what he is, how he compares to FDR in terms of liberal programs, and maybe what similarities there are in regards to both of these individuals. Now, when you were reading, did any of LBJ's stuff remind you of FDR?
Yeah.
What?
Medi-Cal.
Medi-Cal, good. Like a lot of his stuff, and we'll talk about today, is a continuation of what FDR wanted to do. And that's important to note. It's important to note. For background, it's not part of the lecture, it doesn't necessarily matter to the A-Push curriculum, but it's fun to think about. LBJ grew up incredibly poor in rural Texas, middle of nowhere Texas. His family was hit very hard by the Great Depression. Why? It's a farm community. And as we know, the Great Depression hit farmers earlier and harder. And in the case of LBJ, his first job was paving roads as part of a New Deal program. So FDR has been his inspiration politically since basically day one. And it's important to know and see that inspiration in the way LBJ does his politics. Cool? So to begin, I don't need you to answer those 3 big idea questions until the end, but you can go jump down to where it says discussion questions, and then we can go from there. All right, so Kennedy, as we saw in the video last week, is elected on this premise of youth and vigor and energy and good looks. Remember we saw in the video his debates with Nixon? And they said on the radio it said Nixon won, on TV it said Kennedy won, and that goes to show you the impact of TV on American society in the 60s. So Kennedy's elected on this premise of a new frontier. That's his domestic program. He's obviously a sharp break from Eisenhower, who was old. It's not always a bad thing. I'm old. That's a good thing. Fernando looks old. Yeah. And this new frontier promised domestic reforms in education, healthcare, and civil rights. Things that are probably needed at this time. And it promised a foreign policy committed not just to containing communism, but to defeating communism, defeating the Soviets, and winning the Cold War. So he promises, at least domestically, a return to much more liberal ideas. The 50s are a time much more so of conservatism, as we discussed, especially in regards to fiscal policy. And JFK promises more liberalism. As you guys read, how much of what JFK's promised actually came true during his presidency? What's that? Not for civil rights, not much, right? And we can't really fault him for that necessarily because he kind of died in the middle. But he wasn't getting a whole lot of momentum on the things that he promised. So, his new frontier promises a return of more FDR-esque liberal policies. A continuation of those 1930s policies. But, as you know, from the 1950s, we have a more conservative bloc controlling Congress, and they opposed JFK's social reforms, specifically in education and healthcare. They blocked what he wanted to do education-wise and healthcare-wise, but they did help with the poor to an extent. As our industry is modernizing post-war, our government spending is still huge, and we pass a big tax break in '63. All those things combine to stimulate a big boom in the economy in the early 60s. A lot of jobs are created. The economy's doing really well in the early 60s. Life, in that regard, is very good. So in this case, all of this is shot down by Congress. Aid for public schools, extension of Social Security, unemployment benefits, medical insurance for the elderly. Congress says no to all those things. So take a second with your partner. What do all those things have in common? Take 30 seconds. What do all four of those things have in common? Go.
Okay, I hate
Yeah, and progressive. Alright. Diva, what do these four things have in common?
They help people.
Well, yeah, they help people, sure. Be a little more specific for me.
They're like ideas that are more like progressive.
Sure, they're more progressive, liberal type ideas. Very good. So they all get shot down by Congress. However, we do see an increase in the minimum wage. We do see an increase in funding for public housing, and that does help the lower class. Now, if we look at JFK's real legacy, his real legacy in terms of long-lasting change in American politics is strengthening the presidency. He does a really good job, if you're into that kind of thing, but a very clearly defined job of strengthening the executive branch. All right? During Eisenhower, a lot of decisions were made by his own staff, but JFK wanted more direct presidential, individualized control. Instead of the power residing in the bureaucracy, much more of it resides in his personal White House staff, his brother, and a bunch of other individuals that are very close to him. And he really also youthened, which is not even a word, but it makes sense for today's purposes. He really brought a whole bunch of youth to the executive branch that we had not seen before. For the first time in a long time, we see a clear academic class of people advising the president, instead of, for example, like military advisors. And his staff becomes being known as the best and the brightest. Those are his people. So, Cold War-wise, we saw some of this in the video on Thursday. I want to go back over it because you guys hadn't been taught it yet. Foreign policy and containing communism is his top priority as president. He believes that Eisenhower had compromised too much when the Cold War should have just been won. JFK promised to close what was called the missile gap, meaning the Soviets had too many missiles, we didn't have enough, which is actually not true. We had more than them, but fear is a great way to get budgetary funds towards your cause. And JFK tried to solve problems in Berlin, Vietnam, and Cuba. Yeah, that ends up being a disaster. That ends up being a disaster, but we'll get into that. He says in his inaugural address, read it on the board as I read it out loud, let every nation know, every nation, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and success of liberty. We will do this and more. So take 30, talk to your partner, What is JFK saying here, and what does he propose to do about what's going on in the world? Chat.
For like
All right. What is his point of view in this speech, please? Shirley.
I think that he's just trying to say that he'll do anything in his power to help, like, any other country that's struggling right now.
Okay. Sure. Go.
Anti-communism.
Very anti-communist, right? It's a pretty aggressive speech if we think about it in retrospect. That we're gonna do whatever it takes. We're gonna pay any price for what we want to succeed. Absolutely, and he does so. So, as you guys know, Eisenhower took the perspective of mutually assured destruction. JFK makes a more flexible response. I'm going to put a word on JFK's foreign policy. It's flexible response. So that we don't just have one option. Right? In the brinksmanship approach, it's like, well, we're right here. If anything goes wrong, it's nuclear war. JFK did not want to be pigeonholed into just nuclear war. So his approach is more flexible response to respond to whatever future problems would come from a variety of ways. So he increased our nuclear arsenal, way more atomic weapons, but he also increased the Army and Air Force, whereas Eisenhower shrunk those, because he's like, well, I got bombs, and what do I need an army for? And he expanded covert operations, created the Green Berets, and expanded our capacity in terms of military advisors to places like Vietnam and elsewhere. He also, in a non-military move, created the Peace Corps and the Alliance for Progress to try to spread our ideals to undeveloped countries so that they'd be less susceptible to communism. This is almost like a Wilson moral diplomacy-ish, as well as like a Marshall Plan kind of approach. Right? That if we spread what we want to spread to other countries first, then communism will be less popular. As you know, the Soviets beat us to space with Sputnik, causing great embarrassment in America. So JFK greatly expanded NASA and announced that the US would go to the moon by 1970. He obviously did not live to see that happen, but the US did in fact land a man on the moon in 1969. What did he say in his speech about going to the moon? Jasmine, do you remember from Thursday? Please. Yeah. We're going to do it not because it is easy, but because it's hard. Like, nobody thinks this can be done, which is why we should do it. Right? We talk about how it's a good life perspective for 16-year-olds. They do things because they're hard, not because they're easy. So we do win the race, quote unquote, to the moon. Started the Apollo program, and there we go. Landed a man on the moon. Check it out. But it's all a conspiracy, right? It actually happened. Yeah. Sure. Because you know all about wind patterns in space, don't you, Matt? So, a couple of crises that we have to know about how he responds is Berlin, Bay of Pigs, and Cuban Missile Crisis. The first is the Berlin Wall. Why is Khrushchev mad? Because all the skilled workers from East Germany kept fleeing to West Berlin. Because as we know from our map, West Berlin is controlled by the Western powers, even though it's in East Germany. So all of these skilled workers are leaving their hemisphere of control and flooding into West Berlin. The USSR's response to this is to threaten to remove all US influence from West Berlin. It's a bad idea. They settle on building a wall instead. So they build a wall dividing East and West Berlin, one that does not come down for another 30-ish years. Tear down this wall. Further, he's dealt a crippling blow early in Cuba as Fidel Castro takes over Cuba. JFK says, yes, we're going to go ahead with this invasion called the Bay of Pigs invasion that you guys read about, in which we train Cuban exiles, people that have left Cuba, to go back and overthrow Fidel Castro with help of the locals. It is a massive disaster. Back in time here. It is a massive disaster, but JFK blames the Republicans, who had been controlling the presidency for the previous few years, for allowing, in his words, a communist satellite to arise on our very doorstep. Back in time to our wall. Here's some pictures for you guys. Yeah, there's the construction of the wall. Saying goodbye to their friends and family. There's the wall. There are people trying to get through the wall. Further, Bay of Pigs, failure, disaster, all sorts of bad, when nobody rises up to help the invasion and they are all put down. Once this happens, though, this shows the Soviets that the U.S. is not going to allow Cuba to just be a communist country right off the tip of Florida. So the USSR begins secretly building up nuclear missiles in Cuba to protect Cuba from another invasion. Logically, this kind of makes sense for the Soviets and for Cuba, but it's not going to make America very happy. On October 14th, 1962, a spy plane discovers that Cuba has missiles and that they are pointed towards America. That's worrisome. How will the U.S. respond? We have a couple options. We can have an immediate airstrike in which we bomb all of Cuba, but what's the Soviet response to that going to be? War. Yeah, bomb us back, exactly. We can have a full-scale invasion of Cuba, but what would that cost?
An invasion.
Yeah, but theoretically, or in the course of an invasion, they would shoot off an atomic weapon and it would land in Washington, D.C., and it's all bad. Or we could do diplomacy. We could do this diplomatically, trading the nukes they have in Cuba for the nukes that we have in Turkey, pointed at the Soviets, which is also very close to the Soviet Union. It's a good idea. Or we could do a naval blockade to keep the rest of their material out. Yeah. As you guys know, we go with number 4. Kennedy chooses to quarantine Cuba to keep new missiles out. And he says we will invade Cuba if the USSR does not remove its nukes. That's the promise. The standoff ends when Russia removes its Cuban missiles and the USA promises to never invade Cuba. So Russia takes the missiles out, we promise to not invade Cuba. Impact-wise, it's seen as a political victory, the first of its kind for JFK. What they do as a response is they install a hotline, a basically quick phone communication between Washington, D.C. and the USSR, so we don't get this close to war again without talking things out. And this near nuclear war convinces both sides to move from confrontation to negotiation. And this is the high point of tension in the Cold War. This is when we get the closest to actually blowing the world all up. And this shows both sides, JFK and Khrushchev, that it is imperative to be willing to negotiate so we don't get this close ever again. And behind closed doors, with nobody publicizing this, the US takes their nuclear weapons out of Turkey. JFK wins on the surface, but behind closed doors, both sides win. Both sides get nuclear weapons out from their backyard, basically. So take a second, read this JFK quote in response to this situation, and respond to it. What is his perspective, what is he saying, and why?
Most basically, was the fact that we all have this flag. We all have the same flag. We are children.